The Texas Panhandle is filled with fields that go on and on chasing the open skies. Farm and ranch lands span thousands of acres, and a community of people where you will never meet a stranger is what you find. Agriculture is alive and strong and defines most of the daily lives of West Texans, with farming myths such as farming being an easy way of life, family farming is ineffective and out of date, or it follows the same model year after year. These farmers and Quarterway cotton growers of Plainview, Texas, prove that these myths are just that. Their stories of how the day-to-day of farming varies, their use of technology, and how innovative today's farmers need to be negate these myths and show how farming is more than just waiting for a full crop or an insurance check. Donald and Stephen Ebling are doing just that. The Eblings have farmed the same lands for 120 years. Stephen is the 5th generation to farm his family's land. Our story begins with Donald Ebling sharing about his life of working on the family farm.
I'm the 4th generation to live in Hale County. My great-grandfather moved here in the fall of 1901 from Marble Falls, and we've been here ever since. Still live on the home place. My grandfather's, the 2-story house is still next to us. My niece has lived there, my brother has lived there, and we've rented it some, but live on the same home place that my great-grandfather moved here. Now I have my son, he's the 5th generation, is back farming and running cattle with me, so it's enjoyable to see something continue, and hopefully he will do an even better job than I've done. We raise cucumbers, seed millet, seed maize, cotton. We've had some soybeans in the past, and then we run a mother cow operation also. We've been no-till farming for approximately 25 years. During the winter, we use our cows behind a cotton field. We put them out, and they pick up the cotton that we've left in the field, clean that up. We usually plant rye into that, or wheat, to make cover for the next year's crop. Gives the cows a little additional something to eat. Produces some organic matter for the crop. Then we will, in the spring, we'll take the cattle off, put them back on grass, let the rye and wheat grow up, and terminate it when it gets to be a foot or two tall. And then we'll go ahead and pre-water the crop, and then we plant into that crop. We've killed it. We'll plant straight into the crop without tilling anything. After a few years, your earthworms start coming back, and they do the plowing for you. They're tunneling in the ground, coming to the surface, picking up organic matter, carrying it back deeper into the soil, creating tunnels for the water to move into the soil during a rain event. The extra wheat and rye trash on top of the ground keeps the ground cooler. We have to plant a little bit later sometimes because the ground is a little cooler, but it protects the young seedlings, slows up the water when we do get a rain, holds it on the ground long enough for it to move into the soil. And then also during the heat of the summer, keeps the ground 50 to 60 degrees cooler on the surface so that we don't have as much evaporation, trying to save every drop of water we can, because water is our limiting factor in this area. But once we get the crop planted, then we'll spray over the top a couple times during the summer to control our weeds. And most of our cottons have a BT gene in them, which helps control any insects that we'd have, bollworms that would be in our cotton. And then in the fall, we will go in and prepare the crop with chemicals to drop the leaves, open the bolls, and then harvest. So it is taking a lot of operations out of the field, where we used to plow 6 or 7 times during the winter. We're saving that fuel. We don't have that carbon emission or CO2 emission into the atmosphere because we're not plowing all summer or in all winter also. So that's what how our operation works.
I guess I was born into the business. I came home after I went to college and graduated Texas Tech University in 2014, came home, farm and run cows full time with my dad. I enjoyed when I was at college. I had some internships and jobs with some corporate businesses, and they were fun for a while, but the challenge wasn't there. I enjoy being outside every day, being my own boss, never knowing if you really do make the correct choice. You make a lot of choices, and you never really know if what you did make was the correct choice. And I enjoy that. It's just a big challenge. Every day you go out, you see something different, you see new challenges, new opportunities, and just to take things that a lot of people would look at as a challenge, a downfall, and try to find some way to create an opportunity and exploit that opportunity within that challenge. I really enjoy that. Well, I think the technology that we have is just absolutely phenomenal. I think it would be mind-boggling to many people to see the technology that farmers and ranchers use on a day-to-day basis. We're able to control all of our pivots and even some of our irrigation wells from our phone. As we're sitting here talking, every sprinkler that we have is connected to the internet, and it can send me real-time information anytime it stops or starts, if the pressure drops, if I have a well that goes off. So I'm able to monitor that in real time, and I think it's very critical in the fact that our profit margins are getting narrower, so farmers have to get bigger and grow more acres of the same crop. My great-great-granddad could make a living off 50 or 60 acres, and now it takes thousands of acres to do the same thing. And so that technology has allowed us to be more efficient in our time and our resources, whether it's GPS, if we pull into plant or spray or anything that we go across the field with is connected to GPS. And so every time we go across that, I'm going in the exact same tracks. I'm not running over crops. It's perfectly aligned. Anytime that I'm planting, if I have a narrow or a wide middle, well, then I'm wasting area that should be producing a crop. And so the ability to be consistent in everything that we do, time after time, and the repeatability, I think is made leaps and bounds. And the cool thing about technology is the more technology we get, the faster that it advances. And I think that's really neat. I think a lot of people think of technology as simply computers and satellites, but I look back at my great-granddad and just look at the things he did. He had technology. It wasn't computerized technology, but I just think it's amazing to see that it's kind of a snowball effect. You have one thing that they can advance with their technology, and then it just creates an even faster advancement of that. And I think it's incredible to see how consistent you can go out in these farms, and every plant is the exact same distance apart, and the spacing between rows is exact. We can spray our fertilizers or chemicals over these crops and have an exact pattern over it, and I think that's just incredible. I think if my great-granddad was to walk out here, he would just be blown away. And I think 50 years down the road, when I'm in the same position, I'll probably walk out in the field and go, we never could have imagined that it could have been here. But how amazing is it to see these people with limitless possibilities creating technologies that are just far and away mind-blowing. With our technology within our sprayers, we can set an exact rate. If you want to put out exactly 1/10 of an ounce of a certain fertilizer or chemical on this crop, it doesn't matter how fast or slow I'm going. We have sprayers now that electronically pulse. If I'm going 15 miles an hour or 2 miles an hour, it's going to put out the exact same rate of this fertilizer, which is incredible. Not only does it help a farmer's bottom line by not, using excess chemicals that he's paying for, but I'm doing the exact same thing over the entire crop. Or you can even have variable rate now with the new technology. They can take satellite images, they can look at the health of a certain crop, take the field, and they can divide it into thousands of different sectors. And that starts when they're planting. When they're planting, they could maybe plant more seeds per acre in certain spots that's more fertile, and then lower their seed population as they get into less fertile ground. And so not only from a farmer's bottom line, but I think a huge thing these days worldwide is sustainability. I know that's a huge thing a lot of consumers want to hear is, is my product, is my food sustainable? Is it good for the environment? Are people doing their best to not destroy the environment? And I think that's a huge thing that we've been able to do with technology. I'm not wasting any seeds. Every seed that I plant, I expect to come up and produce a viable plant that I can harvest. Because if not, I'm wasting money and I'm wasting resources, fertilizers that I'm putting out there. And so I think it's in every farmer or rancher's benefit to use these technologies to be as efficient as possible. And in return, that makes us sustainable. Every technology that we bring into our operation is making us more sustainable. I think the least sustainable thing that we could possibly do for the environment would be to revert back away from these fertilizers and these chemicals that we're able to use to be incredibly efficient, go across fields as few times as possible. We're burning less fossil fuels, we're putting less fertilizers out, we're having less erosion and seeping less things. And so I think every ability that we have to use a technology in farming, I think, is a huge step forward in sustainability. And I think that's a huge message that I think the worldwide consumers would love to know about. And I don't think that there's any person out there that can be faulted for saying that large agriculture is not sustainable. I don't think it has anything to do with people being unintelligent. I think it has everything to do with being uneducated in the field of agricultural technology. You can never fault somebody for believing something if they've only heard one side of the story. And so I think that's a huge thing that we're blessed with the ability to use in that technology.
Quarterway cotton growers, farmers, are diverse in their years of experience. Meet Stephen Getz. He is a first-generation farmer who shares about the struggles and advantages of being a first-generation farmer.
I graduated from Texas A&M and took an internship with a vegetable company out of Wisconsin and worked with those guys for 5 years and had an opportunity to come out to West Texas and take over a cucumber operation here. And from there we've grown. We still manage the cucumber operation, but farming and doing pumpkins, doing some diversified vegetables. I am a first-generation farmer. My parents didn't farm. My parents worked in the school district and had the opportunity whenever I was younger to get into it and really love agriculture. Some of the great things about being a first-generation farmer are being open to new ideas. First-generation farmers probably more willing to try or implement new technology and maybe shoe in some of the newer farming practices. I think that there's been, just in the past 10 years, we've seen a big influx of technology, be it GPS or seeding, population control, spray control, different irrigation practices. A lot of the new farmers are very apt to move into the new technology. We're a fairly diversified farm. Right now we've got cucumbers, pumpkins, we've got cotton in the ground. Following the cucumbers and pumpkins, we're going to be planting wheat. We'll bring in cattle. We've got somewhat of a cash flow throughout the year that works really well for us. It's very beneficial to be diversified right now. There are opportunities in specialty crops that you may not find in commodity crops right now. The benefit to rotating wheat behind vegetables, you've got a plethora of options. You can take your wheat to harvest, you can graze it out, you can use your wheat for a cover crop. You can cut silage off of it. It's a very versatile crop following that. Also, by doing that, rotating from vegetables to wheat to cotton or corn, whatever the next two crops may be, we're able to put in a 3-year rotation in our crops, and we see on average a strong increase in yield and productivity from the ground. Something that works really well with the vegetables, our cucumbers are a very short season crop. It gives the producers an opportunity to utilize their water early on. Cucumbers are a 45-day crop. You can plant them early in the season prior to peak water consumption from the cotton plant, or you can plant it late in the season after they've really kind of topped over and they're just finishing out. It makes a really great rotational crop for this area. Another benefit of the cucumber crop prior to a cotton crop is the cucumbers are fairly shallow rooted, and the fertilizer that we apply to the soil, cucumbers may utilize half of that. There may only half of it be available to it. Following it with a cotton crop, we see further utilization of that fertilizer and increased yields, more productive crops there.
These farmers live in the midst of their farms. They are not going to do anything that will harm their land, the farm, or their kids that are living in the middle of the farm, much less something that will harm your kids. Through the advancement of technology and sustainability efforts, this is constantly improving.
I think that's one of the most exciting things about farming and running cows is every year we're starting over with a blank slate. And I don't mean that January 1st we're starting with a white sheet of paper and we're going to try to produce a crop by December 31st and that's our year and we start over, because really the day that we pull that calf crop off or our cotton out of the field, we're already starting our new year. You know, when I'm fertilizing my crop this year or applying chemicals this year, I'm already thinking about my crops 2 and 3 years down the road. You know, when I plant a small grains crop, I'm not really thinking about just my millet crop this year. I'm thinking, okay, well I can produce a grain crop this year, but when I'm doing that, I'm producing tons of humus that'll go back into my soil, and that'll allow me to produce a healthier, more efficient cotton crop for less year. I can produce more pounds of lint per acre because I'm retaining my moisture, I'm retaining my nitrogen and carbon within the soil simply by growing a completely different crop that was grown a year or two ago. And so I think it's really neat to know that every year I'm going to have to grow something completely different, and the yield that I have, while it might not be completely dependent on what I did last year, it is very dependent on what I've done for the last 10 years. But at the same time, if I don't do the right things this year, it doesn't matter what I did 10 years ago. It doesn't matter what I did last year, because it's completely dependent on my ability to manage it this year and to manage for next year before I ever even plant that crop. And so I think the complexity of it, I think, is very attractive to a lot of young people to see that, you know, it's not you made the right decision. I might not know if I made the right decision for 10 years, but I can watch it every year and I can say, okay, well, this is what I did last year, this is what I'm doing this year, and this is what I need to do next year to improve it. Or, hey, I did this last year and I don't really like how that turned out. I think it might have hurt my crop, you know, it might have knocked my yield off by 100 pounds, and so I need to adjust this. But at the same time, if I don't do the exact right thing, if I don't pull in there and plant exactly right, then I've already handicapped myself for this year. And so I have to do it right this year, and I had to do it right 10 years ago because I need to do it right in 10 years. And so I think that's something that's very interesting. I'm not producing a product that if I screw this one up, I can just adjust the machine, you know, and it'll make from now on, it'll make them all right. And so I think that's very challenging, but I think that's what makes it so much fun, and that's what makes, if you look at a lot of farmers don't retire at 50 or 60, you know, a lot of farmers, I mean, there's a farmer north of us that's, I think he's 100 years old, you know, and he enjoys doing it, so why retire, you know? If you enjoy it and you're challenged by it, I mean, what else could you ask for?
Quarterway Cotton Growers is devoted to walking alongside their farmers, from working cows to fixing sprinkler heads to loading seed into the planters. Whatever they need a certain day, Quarterway Cotton Growers is there to help. It is not just a working relationship between Quarterway and the farmers, but a community relationship. These people live a life day in and day out together.
I love being part of the farming community. You know, we all take care of each other. We have deaths or illnesses, and the great thing about farmers is we all pitch in and help each other, because we never know when it's going to be our time that we may need help.
There's just a lot of hats that all these guys have to wear here, and it really takes a very versatile person to be a farmer now. I think that's one of the things that's changing for the next generation is you better be ready to adapt or be willing to change.
I know there's a lot of stigma with the younger generations. A lot of people say, well, that generation's entitled, and I think that's something that our generation has to look at and say, okay, I don't want to be known as entitled. What I want to be known as is somebody that came in here and the other generations are telling me this can't be done because of this. So you need to step back and look at it and say, well, if everybody is thinking that way, well, the opportunity is in the opposite direction. So I need to take what everybody else is looking at as a huge disaster, a huge problem, and I need to turn it around and use it as an opportunity, because I think there's more opportunity to be made in other people's problems and struggles and in things that other people see as a pit of just wasted resources. I think that is where the big opportunities are to be made, you know. Younger people grow up and move into agriculture, their mindset is different. And I don't think it's wrong. I think if I grew up doing one thing, well then you've kind of programmed your brain to do something. Well, as kids graduate and they've never known anything but computers, they have a completely different perspective on how to do things, and it gives them an incredible advantage. You know, now there's disadvantages to doing that. They might not understand how to do some things that the older generation does, but it becomes natural to them to be able to go sit down at a screen and know exactly how to do everything. Everything that you do, I think, as a young farmer or rancher, not only are you trying to prove yourself as I'm an honest, hardworking person, you know, because I think that's huge in agriculture. If you don't have integrity and you don't have a name that's worth something, then you don't really have anything. You know, I've seen it time and time again. You can have as much money as you want, but when you step into the realm of agriculture, if people don't respect you and trust you, you won't get anywhere. You might for a few years, but I think to have a last name that you're proud of, you know, that you've worked for, and I think that's huge. I didn't work for my last name. My dad worked for his last name, you know, and my great-granddad built the integrity that has to do with what people think. And it could take one day to run that. You know, I could go do one thing that's not ethical or not right, and I've completely destroyed what my family has worked for the last 120 years. And so I think the ability to blend the school of thought that everything I do has to be done right, has to be done with integrity, and everything I do I need to pursue excellence and do it in an honorable way, you know, and blend that with the ability to think with technology and out of the box spectrum, I think really gives young farmers a huge advantage. And so I think being a young farmer is one of the greatest assets and advantages that I have, is the ability to talk to older farmers, know what their experiences are, not have to repeat that failure because they've already done that and it didn't work. So learning from their failures, applying new technologies, I think gives young farmers an incredible asset.
Quarterway cotton growers strive to connect brands and retailers to their farmers by showing the sustainability efforts that they have committed to.